First off, what really struck me with this album, Time and Evolution, is I had trouble kind of coming up with a term for it, but you seem to be a singer of subtle emotion in that you sing at kind of an even level, but there's a lot of ache in there. It's full of emotion, but it's not, heavy on volume or angst or rage or any of that kind of thing. Is that a style you developed, or is that just how it's always emerged for you?
Hmm. I don't think it's a style that I've consciously developed. I think it is in keeping with my personality. Um, I'm not someone to rock the boat. Uh, I'm not going to come in a room and make a stand or make a statement. I am more subtle as a human being.
Mhm.
So that's a very interesting observation. But yeah, it's not deliberate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't know, I think it's a really cool effect, and because just and not to knock any other, styles of singing or the more overt out there, because I love punk music when they just go out and scream too, but as an introvert myself, it's fascinating when someone can actually express all of this hurt and worry and stuff, but in a controlled manner, because that's kind of how it happens in real life.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it happens with, um, I think, people who know how to temper themselves and who are, um, able to have a filter, which isn't always the best thing either, right? Because
Mm,
sometimes you might not communicate what you're really feeling and thinking because you don't want to hurt somebody or you're worried about what they're going to think.
right.
Um, but yeah, that's interesting. It is my style to say it with the lyrics, and also, I feel very, very deeply, as I think a lot of songwriters do. We're natural empaths to some extent. So, a lot of the writing is bringing out what I'm really feeling and thinking, but in a maybe in I don't want to strategic's not the right word,
Hmm.
but in an appropriate way, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's uses of metaphor and storytelling where you're conveying the emotion, but you're not pinpointing something in particular. You're not coming directly at it, and I always thought that was one of the great advantages songwriting have, is they can talk about these really heavy topics, but couch it in ways that um make it more universal, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, and I've learned a lot about how to find imagery and use imagery for what you're trying to say instead of just saying it. How can I show this, and convey this message in a way that can be visualized more so, um, than just saying it outright. And I've learned that as a songwriter through mentors that I've worked with, how to get better and better at that.
And that's interesting, because I'm wondering, so as you get better in that, does the song come to you in your mind via the imagery, or is it a case of, all right, here's the idea, and you kind of write down the song, and then you go back and shift it into something with more imagery?
That's a great question. I mean, anytime I have an observation or something strikes me and I'm trying to live in this state of being very aware, at all times. It's impossible, but it's something I really have to work at because I'm also an ADHD person, as we all are probably to some extent. But I have a running list of interesting observations, things that move me, things that resonate me. And then I'm always looking for what's the metaphor for this song, or the image. What is it that can really bring this song um, to light? And then I'll find that thing,
Mm.
uh, whether it's out in nature, whether it's an experience, or it can be a number of different things. But I'll find that thing and then I'll marry it with one of my topics that I've observed where I just couldn't get the words out or couldn't get the song written, but it's there and I know I want to write a song about this. And then I find the right images to put it together.
Okay. And I don't know, have you noticed, well, obviously you've noticed, but has it been like a gradual kind of transformation where suddenly you're more attuned to those little moments in life that maybe pass you by? That is it? Are you just kind of naturally or even subconsciously looking for those things now?
I think I think I've always been that way. Um, but filed away those thoughts and those feelings, growing up. And now I try to go back and access those feelings and those observations from the top as far back as I can remember.
Mm.
But it has definitely been more of a learned process for me, learning to be aware, learning to listen more intently in conversations, um, learning to observe people and circumstances, what's going on in the world, to be awake and aware in the world. And it's, like I said, it's hard to do all the
Yeah.
time. Um, but I've learned that, learned to get better at that.
And I think at least what jumps to mind, one song that really kind of encapsulates all that we've talked about so far is the song "Living and Dying," which, from what I've read, you wrote about a friend who has repeatedly struggled with drug use and alcoholism, and the just one of their statements kind of tripped your songwriter brain into that
Yeah.
kind of mode. um and it's great because, again, it's, I would call it a song that addresses a lot of different issues that people may have, even though you wrote it about a single person. It's like you've broadened it. And so I wonder, when you're writing a song like that, do you really focus in on the person you're writing about, or do you purposely think, I'm going to try and make this broader?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think so many of our songs that we write as songwriters are autobiographical, but eventually run out of autobiographical stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to think beyond your familial relationships or even friendships. But I'm still in that stage where I've got a lot of material, I feel like that is still to come. And it helps me to write the song with that particular person in mind.
Mm.
So yeah, that song was about a specific person. Um, and that person also, what I talk about in the song is this idea that they just go from town to town and about once a year on average, pick up and move to another town and start over, and that they're part-time, he'll make friends and lovers and just everything's kind of part-time. And then, well, I'm done here. Or self-destruct, kind of blow up these relationships, lose the job, and then pack up and move to the next town, to another apartment. And as a way, it when that statement was made and I thought I'm going to write a song about this, I thought about the full spectrum of that person's life and the behaviors that were accompanying um his life. And
Mhm.
I thought, I wonder if this moving all the time has something to do with trying to escape, changing your environment constantly. Is that part of the addiction process? Trying to escape or change, or the next town's going to be better, the next thing's going to be better. And not just dealing with the problem is not the town, the problem is, um, getting your arms around this demon that is controlling you.
Yeah, and the line that really stuck out when I was reading about the song is just that idea of I don't want to die, but I don't want to live like this,
Yeah.
and just walking that line between
Yeah.
not great options.
Totally. Somewhere between living and dying. And yeah. I mean, somewhere between living and dying could be a very wide spectrum, but for this person, it was just very narrow. Like, I don't want to live like this, but I don't want to die. And it's like, it seems pretty hopeless what's in between those two things.
Yeah,
It was so, so sad to me. It just really hit me hard. To For someone to have that exist, be living that existence is just really tough.
yeah. Did they ever hear the song once you finished it?
No.
No.
Mm-mm. Now, I don't know if they have, but I could almost guarantee that they would not think it is about them.
Ah,
They wouldn't put two and two together.
right, right. Interesting.
But still, out of protection for the person, I don't say specifically who it is, or something like that. So,
Yeah, right, right. No, but I was just curious if like they even knew that you were creating this song.
mm-mm.
Um and it also brings up a statement I read of yours where you talk about your existence as a musician as the constant challenge of being an empath and a songwriter. Which seems to be this song is a great example of. First off, do you think being an empath makes you a better songwriter on the whole?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
But does it also make other aspects of life harder?
Yes. I mean, I went for a long walk this morning and I saw a dead bunny in the road. Somebody ran over like a mama
Mm.
bunny. And that, I can't stand that. It just kills me. I mean, no pun intended there, but I hate that. Then I start thinking about the little babies that don't have a mom. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I do. That's how deeply I can feel about even an animal. So it's a blessing and a curse. I feel, for me, it's a blessing and a curse to be
Yeah,
that of an empath.
because then it makes me wonder, all right, is the artistic gift worth the interior tumult that you go through on a regular basis because of it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think the gift is just uh having the courage, just being brave in the face of fear, having the courage to do the art and put it out into the world. Um, that's the hard part.
Mm.
And be vulnerable.
Hmm. And you've made some interesting artistic choices too on this album with the song Billboard Sign. There's this really cool part toward the end where you're singing but not lyrics. It's vocalizations. It's kind of this haunting tone. um and again, no words, but a lot expressed. There's a lot felt. how did you how did that part of the song come about? How did you decide to make that move at that point?
That song is so meaningful to me. You know, it's about my coming out process years ago, um with the traditional Southern Baptist family that I grew up with, and kind of being asked the question unexpectedly, like a surprise attack,
Oh.
and telling the truth when it was on the line, you know, and I either had to lie or tell the truth. And so that song encapsulates that whole experience. And so the ahs at the end are really came naturally to me as I was writing that song. I wrote that song pretty quickly. Um and it was my cries. You know, it's crying out is what that is, for all of the damage that was done that can't be undone. That that even though my family has healed, there was, you know, we still struggle, but there's just some really significant damage back then that it's hard to forget. I forgive, but it's hard to forget. And then this idea of all the wasted years that came along with that, where, you know, there's the better half of a decade where we didn't really engage. And so it's just, God, that was a lot of wasted time on the earth. When you could have really spent precious time with your parents, you
Hmm.
know. And so those are cries at the end of that song of just, you know, frustration and sadness, but there's resolution that has come from that journey, and softened hearts that we've developed from that journey.
Hmm. And how much does it hit you emotionally when you sing songs like that live?
Um, that's a really good question. Knock on wood. I got emotional recording that song in the studio for the first time since writing it.
Hmm.
And I had to stop in the middle of the song because I like had a lump in my throat and I was like, hold on, I need a minute. Um, but it hasn't hit me again like that. I did play it for my parents, and that was tough and very scary. I was sweating. I was just like, oh my gosh. Um, but you know, I think they had a deep appreciation for it. And my dad, it ruffled his feathers a little bit, but then he was very gracious, and he at the this makes me cry. But at the end of it, he said, gosh, that was so emotional.
Hmm.
That's what he said. So
And when you say play, did you mean you played a recording or you actually sang it to them?
no, I played a video of me singing it live.
Okay. I was going to say, because if you could have pulled it off singing that live to your parents, then you are you're one of the
Yeah,
toughest people I'd have ever met, if that's
I
the case.
couldn't. I couldn't. I don't think. Yeah.
And did you specifically want to be in the room as they were watching it?
Yeah, I mean, they kept begging me. They wanted to see this performance, and um, you know, there were only a few songs that were captured. And so it was one of the songs that just kind of played, and I just made the decision not to shelter them.
Hmm.
and turn it off. It's not a mean song at all. It's a very tender song
Yeah.
that still um that still captures the pain that all of us endured
Hmm. Yeah.
along the journey.
Still, I mean, there's lots of people that write songs as a catharsis and a way to vent feelings and emotions they couldn't otherwise express, um, especially in front of the people that cause these strong emotions. And so, it's quite impressive that in addition to doing that, uh, I don't know how to describe it. You went straight into the situation with this. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to hide this away.
Yeah.
Um, it's I don't know. Have you always been that kind of fearless? Because I think that would take a great amount of bravery to do that.
Um, I mean, I'm not fearless by a long shot. I think it's more of what the last line that you read a few minutes ago about that struggle between being an empath and being who you are and really expressing yourself. Um, it's become more and more important to me as I've gotten older to be completely authentic. And my parents are kind of the last people in my life where I'm still worried about what they think, in particular, my father, and I grew up being a people pleaser. So part of it, I think, is just my desire to tell the truth and be authentic with them is worth the risk
Hmm.
at this stage in my life. It hasn't always been. It's taken me a long time to get to that point. But it also is a testament to how far we've come, that I can share this art with them and uh, we're still okay.
Yeah. And then to back up a little bit, so what is your typical songwriting process? Do you even have a process?
I wish it was more organized. It's uh well, the iPhone has helped me organize more
Mhm.
so because I can go back to that same note and I can keep a running list of ideas that come into my head. But more often than not, it's driven by a melody. I'm
Mhm.
hearing something in my head, I'm picking up my guitar, I'm figuring out if I want to finger pick, if I feel like strumming and just kind of flushing out a melody that I do look for and think about melodies that have more of those emotional type of chords
Mhm.
in them. Uh, so once I have a decent idea of a melody, and then it becomes about, okay, I saw this image, and I can give you an example of a song I'm working on now. We had this lone coyote who kept hanging around our backyard on the other side of the fence, which is a see-through fence.
Mhm.
And um, he kept coming around middle of the day, um, for at least a month, if not longer, and looking around and just hovering around. And of course, we have a couple of chihuahuas, so that didn't help. He probably knew they were there in the house, um, but I just was observing this lone coyote and did some research on what it means when a coyote is alone and traveling around like that in the middle of the day. Um, and I was able to fit that into something I've really been wanting to write about.
Hmm.
And then but it kind of started with the melody, with the little finger picking riff that I have come up with. And so that song has started to come together now.
Hmm. Wow, that's kind of fascinating.
But the last part of it to come, I had the melody, I had the idea of the lone coyote as being my metaphor. Um, but it did not instantly come to me. Oh, that is the idea. That's the story that fits
Mm-hmm.
with this image. And then the melody matches up because it's a serious song. You know, it's not a sad song or anything like that, but it's um, you know, the stuff I seem to lean toward.
Mm-hmm.
The deeper type of songs versus a fun uh, you know, a fun surfacey kind of a song.
Yeah. Yeah. And
More
is
lighthearted.
right. But I'm assuming you're not that way all the time, because a lot of people, I don't know, I don't know if there's a correct way of putting it. A lot of people, much as the same way they assume an actor is a lot like the role that he or she plays,
Hmm.
for some reason people tend to assume that the person is a lot like the songs that they sing. And in some cases, kind of true, some cases not. Um, and so it's I don't know. So my assumption would be you're not like this all the time, but that's where it hits you emotionally, and that's where your art comes from. Am I somewhat on the in the
Yeah,
right vein?
yeah, that's correct. I mean, I'm an introvert like you are, but I'm also, I have a sense of humor. I like to be around other people. I just need I need my batteries to recharge.
Yeah.
Uh, I am a serious person also, and sometimes I'm an intense person. Um, I'm a thinking person.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem, intellectualizing everything, which everything cannot be intellectualized, but then a deeply feeling person. And I love to laugh. I love to have a good time. So I think all those things are there, but my songwriting is more about, I guess you would say, serious topics.
Yeah. Um, and much in the way I would say that you obviously in this interchange like think about what you want to say, what you want to respond, how you really feel. I With your songs, especially on this album, there's no wasted words. There's everything seems very much written intentionally, and as we were discussing, with Billboard, even these ahs and vocalizations, it's not there to just fill space. There's a purpose behind everything. Um, has that been something that evolved over time, or did you always write that way?
No, I didn't always write that way. I didn't, in older songs, I wasn't uh working so hard to craft those songs. I was just kind of whatever was kind of at the top of my brain, writing and trying to figure out the rhyming scheme and all of that. But I've learned over the years from these mentors or these songwriting workshops I've gone to in Nashville for the last 7 years, 7+ years now. Um, I've learned how to craft a song. And even then, when I think a song is finally done, um, somebody like Mary Gaucher could say, "What if you did this?" And inevitably, it always makes the song better when I bring it to one of my mentors. And not all of them are vetted through a mentor by any stretch, but um, I've learned how to really chisel down and make a sculpture from a block of concrete or whatever the material is. I've learned that over time to get very picky and talk about the wasted words, not waste a single word, and make sure if I'm talking about a a generic type of noun like a car or a river or a hill or something like that, to try and give it a name, try to give it more of a description so that someone can can picture that.
Mhm.
And I have pages and pages of notes from these small group workshops that I went through with these Grammy nominated artists, one being a Grammy winner. And I'm just a student, you know, and I've always been like that. Like I just when I get onto something, I want to learn everything about it. But then at some point, you just have to maybe break the rules because you learn all the rules, but then everybody breaks them. Um, and find my own voice, find my own writer's voice. And I think I'm with this album, I'm doing that. I'm finally doing that.
Hmm. Is there a way to articulate how this genuine voice is different from maybe what you've written in the past?
It's just much deeper. It's more descriptive. It's much more deliberate and intentional in terms of the crafting of the song. When in the past, like I said before, I'm just kind of I'm trying to think of an older song. And those songs are out there and they've got good melodies and they're well structured songs, but they're just way more generic,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I've learned to get actually the more detail you can put in a song, you know, you might think that it's no one's going to identify with that. It's way too detailed, but it somehow has this magical way of being universal for people.
Yeah.
I try to do more and more of that crafting and just getting detailed. And you know, Mary Gaucher is an example of she's just a master of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can picture um she talks about seeing her father's angry face through his lighter's flame in one of her songs, and you can just picture that. It's just really,
Right.
really excellent. So learning from people like Mary Gaucher has been an invaluable experience for me.
Yeah. One artist I've worked with a couple of times is Jonatha Brooke. And
Ah, I
so
love
I
that.
know that you've listed her as a mentor and done
Mm.
work with her. So I'm curious, what's something that you learned from her?
Oh man, so much. She is such a wonderful, genuine human being, as you probably know. Um, You know, Jonatha has always been the one who just gave me the permission to be me. And I've never felt like I've had to, when I know I'm going through a workshop with Jonatha, I've never felt like I've had to, okay, let me craft a song that Jonatha would like.
Hmm.
'Cause believe it or not, sometimes I think that way. Um, she's just so great. I would say melody, you know, she's helped me hear different kinds of chords and melodies and chord progressions that I hadn't thought of that weren't really in my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
She's taught me every imaginable guitar alternate tuning that you could think of. And that has been, you know, Billboard Sign is written in an alternate tuning, Faithless is written in an alternate tuning.
Hmm.
So you're on stage, if you've ever seen her perform, you know, she's tuning down, she's tuning up, and now I'm doing the same thing because I wasn't really thinking about how that would impact me on stage with a single guitar, you know, and having to talk while you retune into a whole different tuning is a challenge, but um that's another example. And she's always kind of pushed me on my lyrics and my ideas. Like, well, what do you mean? If I play a song for her, what do you mean by this? And or I'll play her a few song ideas and she's like, I like that one.
Hmm.
Work on that one. You're the Dog is a song on my album that is directly influenced by Jonatha Brooke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, because she's a fantastic. Well, besides singer, she's a fantastic songwriter, and again, no wasted words and a lot of imagery, and feeling packed into succinct lyrics.
Yes. Yes. And great creative song ideas.
Hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, when I saw you work with her, I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
Um,
she's great.
and well, then also because you talk about the different guitar tunings and the challenge of doing that live, I'm also wondering about because as I understand, you've done a lot of like solo performances, but when it comes time to record, you've got a full band going on here, and some fantastic backup singing happening as well. Do do you write for that, or do you write one way and then figure it out later, or do you hear it one way or hear it both ways?
I definitely, when a song is finished, I have an idea. I have a sound that for most songs that I like, that I'm envisioning. Um, and so a good way to share that with my producer is I like the vibe of this song for, this song out there
Mm-hmm.
already for this particular song that I've written. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And then there are other songs. I mean, Mary Bragg is so good at what she does as a producer, coming from a songwriting background, that what was crazy to me is that the things that the direction that she wanted to go with some of my songs was exactly what I had in my head
Hmm.
of how I wanted it to sound, how I wanted it to be delivered.
Hmm.
And I was nervous about that because past albums, especially not albums, but I've done a couple of EPs over the years, and uh, especially my first one, it was just kind of um, I was so intimidated and didn't know what I was doing, and so uh, the people I was working with, they were wonderful and they were great musicians and very talented and everything. But I just took whatever ideas they came up with.
Hmm.
And so it still turned out, but for this album, I really wanted it to be a reflection of this is how I want this song to sound.
Hmm.
And then Mary Bragg just was complimented that with her ideas, and you know a number of the songs she brought the ideas to the table of this is what I'm hearing for this song, and then I loved it. It was
Hmm.
wonderful.
And then has the opposite happened where what you've done with a full band has that in turn influenced how you then perform it solo?
Mm, that's a good question. I haven't yet performed this album with a full band, but I'm going to. And I've been thinking a lot about that. Um, it's pretty close. I would say there are some differences in how I might sing it live,
Hmm.
but it sort of just comes out at the time. It's not something I'm really thinking about. I think it's that thing where you sing your song so many times over and over and over that you get in this headspace where you just kind of want to do it a little bit differently each time, but your fans want to hear it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But you see that in artists who've been singing their songs over and over and over live, that they do sometimes put little melodic changes in there, little guitar changes. So that happens,
Yeah, yeah.
as you know.
And then one thing I found that kind of fascinating. is I have yet to interview a musician who, in a different capacity of their life, works as a financial planner. Uh, um, I've had some very different jobs. There was who was it, Jet from Sister Hazel? He had like a degree in architecture, and so I
Wow.
thought that was fascinating, and he actually does stuff with real estate and all this kind of stuff. But um, so first off, I'm wondering, is there any commonality? Is there any shared skill between being a financial planner and being a singer songwriter?
I do. I think there's overlap for sure. Um, being a financial planner it's about numbers and it's about math. And I mean, that's table stakes. I have to know how to think on that level to be able to guide someone through their financial journey. But it's just as much, if not more, of a people business.
Mm,
It's relationships and it's building trust and it's learning um, about human behavior. People are very emotional about their money,
mm,
and it's tied to uh, it's a means, but it's not the ends. It's tied to so many things, their goals, their dreams that they're wanting to manifest. Um, and so it translates to songwriting, the mathematical side, I think, in, songwriting is a very condensed art form. You only have so much time the for the length of a song. You've got to find your rhyme scheme. You've got to get creative with your words. There's a structure to songs typically. There are numerous structures, but you have to fit all this. You have to build this puzzle. Fit
mm,
all these pieces together, and that's very similar to building a financial plan for
mm-hmm,
me. It's more the imagery and the creative thinking. There's some creative thinking in financial planning, but it kind of is what it is. These are the numbers and this is what's feasible. And it's all about trade-offs at that point. If you decide to go on the vacation to Europe, then you may not want to replace your roof
mm-hmm.
this year.
Yeah.
So um so there are some um similarities, but I do find myself I either have my songwriter hat on and take that off, or I have my financial planner hat on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes if I'm doing financial planning meetings and things, one day I can't even get into the other space. And so like I'll carve out every Friday to really just I'm not doing any business. I'm working on songwriting today so that I can stay in that headspace.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. But no, you're right. I mean, it's fascinating. There is a lot more overlap than I expected there would be. Um, Actually, kind of along similar lines, I once interviewed a couple of guys in Thomas Rhett's band, and Travis Vance, the bassist, talked about he went to Berkeley up in Massachusetts, and he
Mhm.
said, to be honest, he said I had a class that taught you how to do your taxes as an independent musician. He said that was probably the best class I had in my entire time at Berkeley.
That's awesome.